Kenya is a model of peace, an island of peace in the region of turmoil. Kenya presents a unique position in the sense that the banking, the economic hub of the Great Lakes region, the ticking veins of this region remain here. Despite the few hiccups, Kenya has been the center of international conferences ranging from UN. Kenya is also equally the headquarters of one of the major offices of the United Nations in south of Sahara. The United Nations offices in Gigir present a position, a very unique position for this country called Kenya to take on the mantle to lead the other states within the sub-Saharan region for the year 2022. It is therefore very, very important for us to support the Kenyan people, the Kenyan nation, the Kenyan government in search for this slot. The question of my dear brothers of Djibouti, I am a Pan-African. But we have had countries in Africa that always violate African Union Charter and regulations. One of them is Morocco, which is said for 32 years it was not a member of African Union until it saw its own isolation that it decided to apply to be readmitted in the African Union. Djibouti is a member of the African Union. We have quite a lot of things in common with Djibouti. We have educated some of their people here. We have close links. But Djibouti seemed to be taken and whipped, used to whip by one non-African state party that has captured the African Union. If you look at the countries, the 13 that voted for Djibouti, you can tell the story of why African Union has a very big problem and an uphill task in resolving and bringing unity amongst the African states. Therefore, Kenya remains one of the best contenders, and we want to encourage the people of the world to help to vote for Kenya. Thank you.
Afternoon to you, and thank you again for joining us for another edition of Diaspora Dispatches, where we get to look at the news-making headlines across the continent. Since morning, we've been looking at the news-making headlines here in Kenya, and of course, just before now, we had diplomatic leaks where we were looking at Kenya's bid for the United Nations Security Council. Remember, Kenya was voted by the African Union, and then Djibouti, which conceded defeat twice, came out and said, no, we're not accepting that. We are still going for this seat at the United Nations, and this voting is supposed to be happening in 8 days' time. So far away from that, now let's just turn our attention to what else is making news across the continent. And before we get into it, let us look at the numbers this morning in some of the few African countries in regards with the COVID-19 situation and how are we faring on so far. Thank you so much. A very good morning to you, depending on where you're watching us from, and a very good evening to you also, depending on where you're watching us from. In Nairobi right now, it's about 36 minutes past 12 here in Nairobi, Kenya, and I think East Africa. So thank you so much, and a very good afternoon to you if you're watching me from East Africa. We turn and we go to Kenya, and the first confirmed cases in the country right now stands at 2,767 cases. The death toll is 84. Recoveries right now in the country stands at 752. Uganda confirmed cases is 616. Recoveries there is 96. The recovery levels there in Uganda is not very impressive. Remember when the country used to have like half of the country has recovered and the other still in active cases, but the recoveries level there has not been quite impressive, and the numbers there have spiked in the last recent days there with 616 cases there. Tanzania is still the same. They've not given us the latest, and so we shall skip that. We go to Zambia, where cases right now is at 1,089. 7 people have died. Recoveries in Zambia stands at 912. And Zimbabwe, cases is at 282. 4 people have died. Recoveries is 34. South Sudan, 1,604 cases have been confirmed in that country. 14 people have died. Recoveries is at 15. Sudan also, South Sudan, the recoveries rate there is not quite impressive, with only 15 recoveries having been made out of the 1,604 cases. And in Sudan, cases right now stands at 6,081. The death toll in Sudan is 359, and the recoveries is 2,014. Ethiopia, confirmed cases right now stands at 2,020. 27 people have lost their lives. 344 others have recovered. And in Madagascar, cases there stands at 1,052. The death toll is 9. Recoveries is 233. Somalia, 2,334 cases have been confirmed so far. 83 people have died. Recovery stands at 441 cases. And Congo Brazzaville, confirmed cases 683. 22 people have died. Recoveries is at 210. And the DRC, confirmed cases have also spiked a lot, 4,016. The death toll is 85. Recoveries is 537. There also the recovery rate there in the DRC is also very wanting. If the cases are over 4,000 and the recoveries are just over 500, then something needs to be done there. And in Guinea, confirmed cases 4,117. The death toll is 23. Recoveries is 2,877. Not too bad. And Rwanda, confirmed cases right now is at 439. 2 people have died. Recoveries is 290. South Africa, the leading country in Africa in terms of the number of infections, right now stands at 48,285. And with that, 998 people have died, and the people who have recovered so far is at 24,364. And Egypt, confirmed cases are 34,079. The death toll is 1,237. That is the highest in the continent, 1,237 deaths there in Egypt, and recoveries is 8,961. Now, 8,961 cases have recovered. It might sound good. Not until you see the number of confirmed cases there. That is 34,079. So a lot of work there needs to be done in Egypt as well. And Burundi, the cases are still at 83. 1 person has died and 45 others have recovered. And did I mention that the First Lady of Burundi, Mrs. Nkurunziza, is in the country? I don't know if she's left for treatment. She'd flown in here for treatment over COVID-19 as well. And Nigeria, confirmed cases is 12,486. 354 have died. Recoveries there is at 3,959. And in Ghana, 9,638 cases have been confirmed. 44 people have died. Recoveries is 3,636. All right, so I see in Ghana here, the death toll is quite high when you tally that with the number of confirmed cases. So there has to be something there that Ghana is doing that is right. If you compare those figures with those of, say, Algeria, which also have close numbers like Ghana. Algeria has 10,154, and yet Algeria has recorded 707 deaths. All right, and Ghana 9,638 cases, but it has only recorded 44 deaths there. So there's a lot to be said there. Although the recovery day figures there for Algeria is quite high. So with 10,154 cases, recoveries there are at 6,717. Also, there's something to be said about that high number of recoveries. And Tunisia, the confirmed cases is 1,087. 49 people have died. Recoveries right now is at 982. Quite impressive, and I think Tunisia did something right that I keep saying perhaps we could borrow a model from Tunisia and see how they were able to deal with COVID-19, because at the start of all this, Tunisia's numbers shot quite high at that time, with the statistics that we were getting from the continent initially, but we saw the government moved in swiftly, and it contained there. And so we see out of 1,087 cases, 982 have recovered, and in Botswana, cases right now stands at 40. One person has died and 23 others have recovered. And so before I come in with the rest of the African news, I'd like to take a very short break. All right, welcome back, and I apologize for that. I got choked a bit there. Reading all those figures. I don't know if I was choked because I was shocked that that is where we are with the figures here in Africa. But anyway, thank you so much. And Uchenna Okafor, thank you so much. I'm doing well. Sorry, so the total number of confirmed cases in Africa as per now is at 189,784. The death toll in Africa stands at 5,172. Recoveries in the continent is at 82,917. And the global cases right now stands at 7,102,965, and the global deaths there is at 406,343. All right, so that is just the latest in Africa, and also the total confirmed cases globally, and that's how Africa sits this afternoon. So we go into the African news, and I apologize for that. We start with Malawi, and Malawi's President Peter Mutharika has appointed a new electoral commission chairperson ahead of a presidential rerun, and in February the Constitutional Court ordered a presidential election be held within 150 days after annulling last year's re-election of President Mutharika, a ruling upheld by the Supreme Court. The former commission chairperson, Jane Ansah, resigned, and criticism by the opposition on how she managed the disputed election. Now, President Mutharika on Sunday appointed Justice Chifundo Kachale to head the commission. All right, the show has to go on, right? So in Zimbabwe, A number of opposition figures arrested for allegedly breaching Zimbabwe's lockdown rules have been released on $1,000 bail each. Tendai Biti, Lynette Karenyi Kore, David Chinhi, Gladys Hatiao, and these other members of the MDC party were arrested on Friday for gathering at a public in the capital Harare that had been occupied overnight by a rival faction with the help of military and police. The takeover was condemned by the U.S. Embassy, which called the security forces' actions politicized. And we move to Chad, where the former president of Chad, Hissène Habré, is due to return to prison in Senegal on Sunday after spending 2 months out of the facility, confined to his home in order to protect him from coronavirus. Now in his late 70s, Habré was jailed in 2016 for abuses committed when he was in power, and at least 40,000 people are estimated to have been killed under his rule in the 1980s. Some of his victims have welcomed the news that he will be returning to prison. One there in Chad. And we move to South Africa, where South Africa's schools are reopening and after government eased lockdowns measures, with the education minister saying 95% of the learning institutions have met requirements for safety reopening. The government has disinfected school premises and distributed masks and personal protective gear. Now, the reopening of schools was postponed by 1 week to allow for full compliance. Local broadcasters have been sharing videos of learners streaming back to school on Monday, that is today. And we move to Nigeria, where Islamist jihadists have killed 6 Nigerian soldiers in an attack on a military base in the northeast. The AFP news agency have reported. Army sources told the French news agency that they used trucks fitted with machine guns to attack the facility near Maiduguri on Saturday. One source said the jihadists overwhelmed the troops, forcing them to withdraw in disarray. And we go to Uganda, where a Ugandan broadcaster has been forced to apologize after its employees wore T-shirts written with "All Lives Matter" slogan in one of its shows. A privately owned NBS television said it did not intend to rub its viewers the wrong way, with the T-shirts adding, "We shall do better." A phrase "All Lives Matter" is often deemed as an antithesis to the Black Lives Matter campaign that highlights a systematic discrimination on black people. Now, the Black Lives Matter campaign was reignited in the United States last month after African-American George Floyd died in police custody in Minneapolis. And we go to Liberia, where Liberian President George Weah says the country has made enough progress against the coronavirus to allow the reopening of the international airport and hotels in 2 weeks' time. A state of emergency, which is due to end next Tuesday, will not be renewed. To date, 345 cases of the virus have been confirmed in Liberia, with 30 deaths due to very low levels of testing. The full extent of the disease is uncertain. And we move to Cameroon, where the lawyer representing a Cameroonian journalist who died in military custody after being arrested for terrorism offenses says he is heading to court to demand an independent investigation. On Friday, the Defense Ministry said Samuel Wazizi had died of sepsis last August, days after his arrest for conspiring with separatist fighters. Human rights activists and journalists believe the journalist was killed in the military detention. Now, Samuel Wazizi's lawyer says he was denied access to his client, and from the moment he was taken from a police station into military custody last August. And so we go to Madagascar, where a Malagasy minister was fired over plans to buy sweets for children taking COVID organics in schools. And now the ridiculousness in this continent sometimes. So Education Minister Rijasoa Adri Monana planned to order $2.2 million worth of sweets, hoping to ease bitterness that he purported the virus cure gave patrons. The AFP news agency has reported. Now she had shelved the plan even before being fired. President Rajoelina, a chief patron of the COVID organics, have rejected the idea. Each student in the country was expected to get three sweets. Can you imagine? In a country like Madagascar, $2.2 million US dollars worth of sweets. So this health education minister thought this will be a very good idea, because when these children are taking the COVID organics, it's very bitter. So let's just use this amount of money to buy every student in this country some sweets. So once they consume the COVID organics, they can have three candies in return, lollipops or whatever it is that the minister wanted to buy. So he was the person, not he, but she was fired. President Rajoelina fired her. Quite unfortunate there. And we go back to Nigeria, where there are strong indications that a major crisis is looming in Nigeria's battle against coronavirus, as COVID-19 cases are rising compared to bed spaces available for patients that are treated for the disease. On Saturday, COVID-19 cases in the country rose to 12,233, with 8,065 of them active and 3,826 patients discharged. But the Federal Ministry of Health told The Punch on Friday that there were 6,994 bed spaces nationwide for COVID-19 patients, and quite a looming situation there in Nigeria in regards to the COVID situation. And now there appears to be there are no enough bed spaces there for the coronavirus patients in that country. And we move to South Sudan. And President Salva Kiir has described as rumors reports of revenge attacks in Bor Town following last week's killing of civilians in Shirikat, Juba. On Wednesday, eyewitnesses at Shirikat residential area in Juba told iRadio that the SSPDF officer Lual Akok arrived at the bus park and allegedly started shooting civilians indiscriminately over a land dispute, killing 5 and wounding 7 others. The incident led to a protest in Shirikat and Bor Town, where hundreds of residents went on streets demanding justice for the victims. Now, but a statement from Lual Marines family later refuted the narrative, saying their son was caught off guard by a mob while in a meeting to resolve a land dispute in Shirikat. Now, rumors were also that had circulated on social media that the indigenous of Bor Town, the Bor community, turned on people from the El Ghazal region in purported revenge attack. However, authorities in Bor Town denied such reports, saying the youths who were only involved in protests over the Shirikat incident were arrested to cool tensions. Lieutenant General Lual, who was President Salva Kiir's relative, was later pronounced dead after suffering injuries that evening. And we go to some news from Biafra, basically, and the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, has reacted to a statement by the presidency concerning the international activities of the secessionist group. Nnamdi Kanu said his group had already destroyed Nigeria, boasting that by the time they were done with the country, the name Nigeria would cease to exist. The presidency on Sunday said it has uncovered an ongoing plot by the IPOB to set Nigeria again against some of its allies, as the US, UK, and the European Union. It alerted Nigerians and the international community of the move it described as most misleading campaign wherein the group uses false allegations of persecution of Christians against Nigerian state. So this is what Nigerian government is saying, that IPOB, that is the movement, Indigenous People of Biafra, there he's saying your leader, Nnamdi Kanu, is working so hard to pit Nigeria against its allies such as the US and UK and the European Union. And last year we saw how Nnamdi Kanu was able to meet with very high officials there of the United Nations in Geneva. They are just trying to bring to their attention to the world what is happening there from the people of Biafra. But, Nigerian government is not taking this lying down and is saying that there is a plot which has been uncovered, and is saying that Mr. Kanu, leading the IPOB, is trying to tarnish Nigeria's name, is trying to, bring allies of Nigeria against Nigeria because of its activities. And he said that will include US, UK, and European Union. We saw last year Mr. Kanu was invited, I think, to the United Nations General Assembly And just before that, or after that, he met with this high delegation, high officials there of the United Nations. And so this must have sent some discomfort to the Nigerian government, because through such platforms, of course, the world will start knowing more what's happening there. In Biafra land, and perhaps a lot of the things that have been happening, the killings and all that, will be exposed. And so Nigerian government is not very happy with this, and is saying now the government of Nigeria is alerting Nigerians and the international communities of the move it described as most misleading. So what the government of Nigeria is saying is that the indigenous people of Biafra's movement that is led by Nnamdi Kanu is very misleading, and it is carrying out misleading campaign, and also what you guys are doing, essentially, according to the Nigerian government, the group uses false allegations of persecution of Christians against Nigerian state. So what the government of Nigeria is essentially saying, nobody is dying in Biafra land, so Biafrans, you need to stop. You need to stop this smear campaign against the government of Nigeria. And Mr. Buhari believes everybody is treated fairly in Nigeria, and there's no such thing as persecution against Christians in Nigeria. So he's saying that's a lie, and that is a smear campaign and a misleading campaign, as he's quoted as saying, against the wonderful government of Mr. Muhammadu Buhari there. So if you're watching me and you're from Biafra, and I don't know what you make of these statements by the government of Nigeria there, saying IPOB's intention is to tarnish Nigeria's very good name and its outstanding nature with the international community, and it's pitting Nigeria against its allies such as the United States, the UK, and also the European Union. So he's asking the IPOB to stop because as far as the Nigerian government is concerned, everybody is treated equally in Nigeria. I don't know where President Buhari really lives. I don't know the last time he came out to address, Nigerians in general, even in matters COVID-19. I don't know how much, even Buhari knows of what really happens there, because as much as, the activities of the indigenous people of Biafra, the IPOB led by Nnamdi Kanu, but there are also very pertinent issues there in Nigeria. Outside of those issues by Biafrans, there are also very pertinent issues in Nigeria that have not been taken care of, that affect to an extent all of us in this continent, because how many times do we need to keep repeating how Nigerian has given, Boko Haram a thriving, atmosphere there in Nigeria, and now it is in a lot of countries there in the Sahel region that is causing a huge, insecurity in that region, but also it could flow if it comes into contact with groups like Al-Shabaab here in East Africa. Nobody knows what can really happen, and so the government of Buhari, as much as, even if we have to speak outside of the statements he's saying the Biafrans or the IPOB is doing to tarnish the government of Nigeria, but the government of Nigeria is not helping on its part, because a lot of issues they're not addressing. Look at the bogus elections that happened last year, and look at, how just a while ago I was reading how, Boko Haram defeated, I think, killed a number of and maimed a number of Nigerian soldiers there. And this has happened, and the growth and nurturing of Boko Haram has happened under the watch of President Buhari. So as much as he wants to say IPOB is tarnishing Nigeria's name, IPOB is tarnishing the good standing of Nigeria as the country in the eyes of the upright in the world, but it is doing a lot of these things by itself. And when you look at, this party saying that the IPOB is bringing false allegations of persecution of Christians against the Nigerian state. There is a section in the southern part of Nigeria where we've seen a lot of killings that is predominantly Christians, and we've seen, people from the north side coming in and killing, and we saw that idea that President Buhari had of, putting up certain areas so that the pastoralists could be allowed to just be all over the country. I can't remember the exact name, but there was something like that that was met with a lot of resistance there in Nigeria. So as much as IPOB, of course, is trying to raise alarm and raise awareness of what is happening there in Nigeria in regards to how the government of Nigeria is abusing the human rights, has discriminated against a section of its own population, has continued to treat a section of its population as second-class citizens. But even with that, the Nigerian government is not even helping, and it's doing the damage all by itself, by the fact that there are a lot of issues that affect Nigerians in general. And Buhari has refused to address these matters. Buhari has refused to take heed of these matters. Buhari has refused, to do the right thing. So I don't understand how now what IPOB are doing would now tarnish the name of the Nigerian government. But that is what the government of Nigeria, the presidency on Sunday, said it has uncovered an ongoing plot by the IPOB to set Nigeria against some of its allies, such as the United States, the UK, and the European Union. All right, so if you're watching, I don't know what your sentiments are in that regard, but thank you so much. I see a couple of you watching, and Victor Osina, you're saying, what is good about Nigeria? You tell me. It is one of the leading, not democracies, because Nigeria celebrated 20 years of democracy last year. Before that, it was just military rule until 1999, when they elected Obasanjo as the first democratically elected president there. He led before, but as a military person, because Nigeria has been under military rule, even a lot of its constitution so militarized, so you will understand why it is very difficult. And President Buhari, having a military background, you'd understand why he handles some of these things. But I think he needs to come to the earth where, he's ruling civilians and be in touch with what is happening to the larger population there in Nigeria. So let me know what you think, because the Nigerian government is not very happy with the activities of IPOB, and he's saying, you cannot keep tarnishing our names like that. You cannot keep tarnishing the good name of Nigeria as a country. So he's saying that has to stop. The false allegations of persecution against Christians is very not right. He's saying that is a lie, and IPOB should stop that. And also, something that Nnamdi Kanu said, and he said that the group had already destroyed Nigeria, boasting that by the time they were done with the country, the name Nigeria would cease to exist. So that was a reaction from what President Buhari said, and then Nnamdi Kanu said. I don't know if this was the right reaction from him, because when he says IPOB has already destroyed Nigeria, and by the time the IPOB is done with Nigeria, then the name Nigeria will cease to exist. Of course, I don't know. Does Nnamdi Kanu expect Buhari will read such and sit pretty? Of course, he will continue to consider you the enemy of the state, number one. All right, so that is not making matters easier there for Nnamdi Kanu, who, remember, the parents died sometimes back last year in November. I think they followed each other in a span of a week, and then they were buried in February. He could not even travel to Nigeria to bury his parents, and sometimes back, I think last week on 30th of May, Biafrans, I think, celebrated. Is it the Biafrans Day or something like that? So thank you so much. Let me know what you make of it. And Uchenna Agustin saying people are dying every day, but according to Buhari, saying, you're just dying of natural deaths. Nobody is persecuting the Christians in Nigeria, so you should all calm down. He's saying that is not happening, and he's saying this is something that IPOB is perpetuating, and that is not the real situation. So you tell me, if you're watching from Nigeria, what is the real situation there in that country? And also another country that we have to talk about just shortly before I leave, President Salva Kiir, what is happening now in Sudan, and about the killings that happened last week. And a relative of President Salva Kiir was involved, but later on he's said to have died. And President Salva Kiir has appointed a committee, a 7-member committee, I believe, to look into these issues and the activities and the situation that culminated to the kills and the killings of 5 people. 7 were seriously injured, and of course one, his relative that was involved, later died. And so the government has constituted a committee, and we shall see how that will work out there and what will happen and what will be the findings there, because there has been some conflicting reports. I don't see one of ardent viewers here who normally brings us the information from South Sudan. I can see you today, Emmanuel Malwal. He's a journalist, so perhaps he's on duty today, but usually he would have given me the latest situation and, shed some light on the real situation there in South Sudan. Good, Samuel, you're saying good morning, my sister. Go on with your good work and tell them the way it is. All right. Well, thank you so much. And Tony Michael, you're saying Nigeria is the name of... All right, I will not say that. Uchenna, you're saying Biafra is our only hope. But while you say Biafra is your only hope, Uchenna, Augustine, President Muhammadu Buhari, are you saying no? As much as you think Biafra is your hope, but you're tarnishing the good name of Nigeria, and you're trying to have Nigeria's old allies, like the US, like the European Union, like the UK, to think otherwise against a very wonderful Nigeria there. So Mr. Buhari is not very happy because he believes that IPOB is on a smear campaign against the country of Nigeria and against his leadership. So the government of Nigeria is not very happy with the Biafrans there. All right. So we see other chaos in Malawi. Not really. I don't know what President Mutharika is trying to do. With just a few days to elections there, now the chairperson of the Electoral Commission in Malawi, of course, resigned about 2 weeks ago, if I'm not wrong. And of course, the president appointed. And you remember, President Mutharika won a controversial election last year in May. I think it happened on the 21st of May last year, if I'm not very long. Over a year now. And then the opposition took the case to court. So the case took so long to be decided upon. But Mr. Mutharika was nevertheless, what happened? He received his oath of office for another term, all right? And it was a wonderful celebration. And the sister-in-law did not even attend that, remember. His brother was the president at some point. I'm forgetting his name. Is it Bingwa Mutharika or something? Yes. So Peter Mutharika, so the wife of, who is his sister-in-law, did not even attend that ceremony. So he won. The opposition went to court. They challenged that, and while the case was still in court, Peter Mutharika was sworn into office, and he was inaugurated for his second term. So the case continued, and so it was determined this year in, I think, the 4th of February, early in the year, and his win was annulled. So he has been working illegally there in Malawi. So until then, the opposition had been, protesting and saying, "Can you remove the chairperson of the Electoral Commission?" And Peter Mutharika said, "No, she did quite a good job, even though she almost got this country into chaos. But she did a wonderful job, so she ain't going nowhere." So 2 weeks ago, they decide, she's out, and yet, the country is going on to another election, I think this month, because in February, the Constitutional Court ordered a fresh presidential election be held within 150 days after annulling last year's re-election of President Peter Mutharika, and the ruling upheld by the Supreme Court, because they also went to challenge that, but the ruling was upheld by the Supreme Court. And so now he has appointed Justice Chifundo Kachale to head the commission. So this is another story that we shall be looking at over this month, and see if Malawi will go to its polls, and will it turn out like what was last year there. And I've never understood the electoral process there in Malawi, and I think also in Nigeria. I saw President Muhammadu Buhari, after the controversial election, and the opposition figure Atiku Abubakar went to court to challenge those elections. But before even the ruling was made, President Buhari was sworn in, so the ruling was made much later after Buhari had been sworn in for his second term and had already started serving. But so I used to wonder, what if the court ruled otherwise? But we saw the chaos that happened there. The president removed even the chief justice of the country just a week, was it 2 weeks before the elections, because I think he knew that somebody will challenge his win, and so I think he needed to protect himself, but by putting the right people in place. Because how do you change a chief justice of a country in 2 weeks' time? All right, it does not happen anywhere in a strong democracy, but President Buhari did that, and so he was just setting the stage just in case somebody goes there to challenge his win. He will have somebody from his corner to back his win up. So now Atiku went to court. Of course, the results, the ruling was made much later. So in such a scenario, so that played well for President Buhari. But for Malawian President Peter Mutharika, who also did a similar situation happened, the court annulled his re-election there, and the country was sent to have another election. And so they shall be having that, I think, this month. All right, so South Africa, as much as it is leading with the number of infections in the continent, the government has eased the lockdown measures, and now schools are reopening. 95% of the learning institutions have met requirements for safe reopening, so they have reopened today, and schools have resumed there on today, I think today, and also there I read earlier, the Islamist jihadist, that is the Boko Haram, killed 6 Nigerian soldiers. I don't know what is happening there in Nigeria, but President Buhari needs to wake up and smell the coffee. You cannot you cannot let terrorists reign in a country like that. You cannot just provide a playing field for terrorists like that there, like President Buhari has been doing there in Nigeria. And something very interesting and ridiculous, as I was reading this, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Now, a Malawi minister was fired over plans to buy sweets for children taking COVID organics. Remember, the famous COVID organics that President Andry Rajoelina has purported to be the cure for COVID-19. But I have since doubted this because of, let me just read for you the figures there. Because when he came out the first time to tell us that Malawi has a solution to that, the figures there were quite low, but right now were less than 200 cases. So we thought, perhaps this thing is working out because it's not many people who have been affected there. Until today, I might have changed my mind together with World Health Organization, because confirmed cases right now in Madagascar stands at 1,052, and out of that, recoveries are at 233, and 9 people have lost their lives. So if at all this COVID organics was working, as Mr. Rajoelina had said, then we would not have seen a spike of these numbers as they are right now in Madagascar. So now this wonderful Minister of Education said, because this COVID organics is very bitter and sour, and our children have to take it, because the government have said that the children must take this, what they say to be the herbal remedy, so that it protects. He says it works as a preventative medication and also as a cure. So the president made a decree and said everybody has to take that. Every child that is going to school have to take that first. And so now the Minister of Education said that because this thing is very bitter, so what we need to do, in her decision as the Minister of Education, is to spend $2.2 million to buy sweets, I think lollipops, and give every student in Malawi 3 lollipops each, so that once you consume the COVID organics, you can just, balance the bitterness with some sweets. And I was just thinking, who even sat down and thought this was a good idea? Of course, she has since been fired, but it's just ridiculous, the things that sometimes happen in this continent. Like, how is that even okay? And Uchenna Augustine, you're saying Buhari boys are killing Biafrans. Ike Dylan, you're saying Nigeria belongs to the Fulanis. All right. Ransoman and Tom, you're saying those are called allies and only interest in our resources. Okoji, you're saying Nigeria is evil. All we want is Biafra. The man there is not Buhari. That is a man wearing a mask. Okay. Evelyn Eda Bernard, you're saying Christians are being killed in southern Kaduna every day. You're saying, good Samuel, you're saying my sister Biafra is only hope for Biafrans. And you continue there. Henry Jerry, you're saying that tarnishing Nigerian image is a joke because from east, west, north, and south, nobody is representing Nigeria. Everyone is representing his tribe, and Nigeria cannot have image when everyone is representing his tribe. All right. Uchenna, you're saying 30 die in Sokoto today. You mean 30 people died today in Sokoto? Could you please clarify that for me? And Nugene, a God gift, leaving us, you're saying Nigerian president is the sponsor of Boko Haram and the herders, so you don't expect him to do anything against them. They are on the mission to Islamize Nigeria. That is why they're killing Christians on a daily basis. But Buhari is saying, no, that is not the case. And he's saying, Biafrans, you got it all wrong. And now you want to tarnish the good name of Nigeria. And you want to tarnish the good name of retired General Buhari. He's saying we are doing a wonderful, and nobody's targeting any Christians in any part of Nigeria. So he's saying Biafrans basically got it all wrong, because according to him, Nigerian government is doing all it can in its mighty ability to protect everybody in Nigeria there from any harm, even from Boko Haram. All right, so he's saying now perhaps you need to support the efforts by the Nigerian government. And so he's saying IPOB is just trying to mess up its relationship with its oldest allies there, the US, the UK, and the European Union there. So he's saying, nah, that is not cool. You all should stop, because Nigeria is wonderful, and the president is doing just fine in protecting your lives, and nobody's targeting any Christians there. That is what Buhari is saying. So I can see a lot of you are not agreeing with those sentiments, but thank you so much for joining, and hopefully you can meet here tomorrow and you can give me the latest, what is happening there in Cameroon, in Nigeria, and in other parts of Africa. And of course, in Cameroon, the lawyer representing the journalist who died in a military custody. I still want to understand why a journalist is dying in a military custody. He's supposed to have died in a normal, jail, because he's a civilian. So why is a civilian dying in a military custody? Cameroon just does things upside down. After being arrested, this journalist was arrested on terrorism offenses, says he is heading, and so the lawyer now is heading to court to demand for an independent investigation. Good luck with that. The journalist is called Samuel Wazizi. From the stories we've been hearing from Cameroon, you want to go and demand from an independent investigation? Good luck with that. All right. So anyway, the things that happen in this continent, and that's why when I heard that the council, is it the council or the organization of African ex-heads of states, came out last week to issue a statement condemning the killing of George Floyd. Of course, we should all condemn such manner of barbaric acts that are happening over there. But when they sat down and thought, this is something that is urgent for us here as former heads of state in Africa to address, because they feel that is one of us that is being killed, that, of course, the black race has faced very difficult times in the US. And then I asked myself, all these things that are happening in this continent, these former heads of states, like what is happening right now, even in Cameroon, like how do you try a civilian in a military custody? That has never happened anywhere in the world. So those are things that are happening in this continent that are not right. And these heads of states, the former ex-presidents in Africa, they've never issued a statement to even condemn what is happening, to even condemn the thriving of Boko Haram here in this continent. And then to add to the ridiculousness, last week, President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, said on Fridays is going to be Black Fridays, where everybody wears black to protest the killing of George Floyd and the discrimination of black people in the US. And I'm sitting here thinking, is this not the same South Africa that aided, that killed other Africans from other African nations? You remember the xenophobia that happened last year, and that has been happening in subsequent years before that. But last year's just reached another level of ridiculousness. So it's just, I couldn't, but perhaps you could help me with that. So thank you so much. And we see each other here tomorrow for other news making headlines across our continent. Despite of what else is happening and the ridiculousness of some of our leaders here, I still believe Africa is the place to be. I still believe Africa is a beautiful continent. We are a beautiful people. And despite of all that, we still should be proud to being Africans. And so that's why Punchline Africa is here, so that we can advance our own narrative and you know what is happening here in the continent. And Uchenna Augustine, you're saying, presenter, when did you Buhari voice? You're so funny. I'm so funny. All right, Buhari has said you guys are just tarnishing his image and you should stop. His leadership is wonderful and Nigeria is great. But people from Biafra, you're messing up his whole plan. You're trying to say how he's killing Christians. You're saying, no, that is not the case. All right. So thank you so much. Continue being proud, being African out there. And even as we articulate our issues, let's push for change here in the continent. And then perhaps, you know, we can have a better tomorrow in Africa. My name is Miriam Agut. A very good afternoon to you. And thank you very much for watching.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.